What is Old Middle Frankish? Let's find out. So, what is Old Middle Frankish? Old Middle Frankish is a historical West Germanic dialect dating roughly from the 800s, 9th century, all the way up to the 11th century and the 1000s, spoken in Western Germany. This is a dialect that shares features with Old Low German dialects, and bear in mind the word German here is used a little loosely to mean Germanic. So Old Low German dialects would include stuff as dialects such as Old Low Frankish, Old Saxon, or if you will, I would term untouched West Germanic. What do I mean by this? Like untouched as in like untouched by the high consonant shift or second sound shift, which I will talk later on in a bit. So here we have a map of where roughly, Old Middle Frankish was spoken or written down, if you will, and then the centers of which, well, actually just a center, really Trier, or Tria, and this is in Western Germany. The thing is, with this dialect, if you will, it's sort of like a hybrid. It's right in between the Low German dialects, if you will, and the High German dialects. It's like right in between. So it will have features of both. It's like an in-between, so to speak. Because the thing is, the more north you go, towards what we call now Netherlands, Friesland, Saxony, if you will. I'm using that in the older sense of Saxony. That the less you see of the high consonant shift, that you see it unaffected, if you will. So moving right on. Yeah, so it went partly under through the second sound shift, and given historical linguistics, it's still under the greater label of Old High German, right? So part of the Frankish, Old Frankish dialects of Old High German. So moving right on. So this was a dialect spoken by the Franks, and this dialect evolved into local dialects, as shown in the map, as I showed earlier, and possibly Trier and possibly in surrounding areas as well. So it's really, to emphasize again, it's a mixture of low and high. So it's kind of like a hybrid, smack in the middle. And because of this, actually, it's kind of hard to determine what text is in Old Middle Frankish or not, because it's kind of hard to determine whether something is actually northern or something is actually southern, so to speak, or whatnot. So yeah, that's the thing with a hybrid language. It's hard to determine sometimes what a dialect, a text is in. So moving on. So this begs the question: what is attested in Old Middle Frankish? So we have glosses, and for those of you who don't know, a gloss, actually a modern example would be, when you look at the back of a book, you have what is called a glossary, where you have a list of words on the left, and they tell you what they mean on the right. Somewhat like a dictionary, but very point blank, so to speak. So in the context of historical languages, a gloss is like you would typically would have like Latin on the left, and then you'd have the Germanic language, if you will, or the other language, if you will, on the right side. And so like these were written down so monks would remember what means what. And we also have attested names, so this could range from kings to monks to bishops to, important figures of the time, what have you, or just like personal names, so to speak, and whatnot. Moving right on. So we have from the 9th to the 10th century, so 800s, 900s. So we have two texts here from the interlinear version of the Psalms. So we're talking about a Christian text here. So interlinear version, what does this mean? So what scribes would do with a Latin text, for example, they would write between the lines, like the translation, so to speak, whatnot. So so that's how we have some Old Middle Frankish, like they would write between the lines of the Latin, of in their native language. And we also have the Trier capitulare, or if you will, the Trier capitulation, and this is, I believe, related to the time of Charlemagne and whatnot. So pretty cool stuff, right? And then we have the famous Myrsa Burger sauber Sprüche. This text in particular is going to need its own video, discussing its dialect in great depth because there are different opinions on what dialect this is in. Given the history of the manuscript or what have you. See, that's the thing with some historical texts that sometimes there's a lot of debate or a lot of discussion regarding the nature of the text, what dialect it's in, what period it's in, how it was written, where was it written, etc., etc. So from Armitage, Lionel Armitage, he thinks that it's Old Middle Frankish. Wilhelm Braune thinks it's Old Rhine Frankish, possibly because I don't want to go too much in depth into this because I'd rather do more research and have a separate video talking about this text in particular. So, for those who don't know, the Myrsa Burger or Myrsa Burger Charms, this is a famous text because it mentions, it gives an eye into pre-Christian spirituality. So, like the second of which mentions the god Wodan. So, which is cool itself. But moving right on. Then in the 11th century, we have a text called De Rico. I put a question mark there because, again, there's some discussion on the dating of this, whether it's in 10th to 11th century or 11th century. I put here 11th century because I believe Dr. Neumann says he thinks it's in the 11th century. I guess due to the dating of the manuscript, if you will. Because that's another thing too about the manuscript, like the actual leaf itself. You can carbon date that. I think. That like you can kind of find out like roughly what time it was fabricated or whatnot. So I have some abbreviations here. So Armitage, Lionel Armitage, he labels this under Old Middle Frankish, but he actually thinks it's Thuringian. And this is due to, I won't go into depth in this video. Like with the previous text, I'll have a separate video to talk about this text in particular and whatnot. And then from Dr. Naumann, he thinks it's Old North Rhine Franconian, Rhine Frankish, or Old Middle Frankish. And with Wilhelm Braune, he thinks it's Old North Rhine Frankish as well. So, a bit of discussion and whatnot, and so this text of itself deserves its own video in good time. Not only, me reciting it, but also the great depth of the nature of the dialect and period or what have you, all that cool stuff. Stay tuned. Anyway, so that's pretty much it for the corpus. I mean, I could add more, but then again, it would be my own mental speculation and whatnot, and I'd rather follow what these professors or what have you, these lecturers, have already put down before us. I would put more, but then again, that's the thing with a middle dialect, so to speak. Your geographical middle dialect is that you have it's hard to determine, what is what, because you have a mix of this, a mix of that. You could argue this way, you could argue that way. It's a bit of a mess, really. But anyway, moving right on. For those of you who want to study Old Middle Frankish and get yourself in the mud, so to speak, I shouldn't say that. Get yourself in the trench. Oh, that's even worse. Get yourself underwater. Okay, that's a little nicer. Underwater of Old Middle Frankish. This is a reader here by Wilhelm Braune. You can actually read Old Middle Frankish text in this book. So this is really cool. Link is in the description. Same thing with this one by Dr. Hans Naumann. Not Neumann. Naumann. Okay, I'll change that right now. Okay, forgive me. So Lesebuch, this is a reader, which is good of itself if you want to see Old Middle Frankish texts and whatnot. As for this primer, unfortunately, I have to be honest here that this primer deals mainly with like old Rhine Frankish, a bit more so on Old East Frankish and a bit on Old Rhine Frankish, but not so much, and the Bavarian and Alemannic or Alemannish. but it doesn't really go into Old Middle Frankish, unfortunately. However, if you are a beginner, if you're new to this stuff, I highly recommend this book. All right, if you're new to Old High German, or what have you, please pick up this book and read it slowly. With any of these texts here, please read them slowly, because you can't learn this stuff overnight. You got to treat it like a present day language or a school subject. You can't learn it overnight. This next book here, I highly recommend this one. Oh yes, this is a wonderful book by Lionel Armitage that goes into great depth into the historical phonology of Old High German, as well as the historical dialectology, like the intimate phonology, the intimate, like if you will, like the phonetics and like if you want to be a real nerd in this stuff, read this book and whatnot. So, and then we have the Altfränkische Grammatik by Johannes Franck. I recommend this one, even though it's in German. I haven't looked into it for Old Middle Frankish, but I would imagine it would have something to say on the matter. I don't know to what degree, but I still would recommend it, because the more the merrier. You have experts talking about this stuff, right? Because these languages are quite scant. There's not much attested, especially when it comes to Old Middle Frankish or whatnot. So it's nice to, yes and no as far as attestation goes, because again, it's a mixture. Some say, oh no, this is Middle Frankish, no, that's Old Middle Frankish. So it's kind of hard to tell. But hopefully with these books, with these PDFs, if you will, links are in the description below, will help you in your learning and helping you to discern what's what or what have you and whatnot. But it's all mentally stimulating, it's all fun and whatnot. So should any of you take this up and learn this stuff seriously, please do this slowly. All right, again, beginners, please pick this up. If you want to learn Old High German or just Old Germanic languages in general, please pick up this book. You got to know the basics before you get into the advanced stuff. And this book too is great for Old Middle Frankish. In fact, if you're going to learn Old Middle Frankish, you'd be actually looking at this book more. Unless you can read German, you can pick this up. And the text for Old Middle Frankish would be in this one, and that one. All right. Anyway, guys, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe if you're new. And if you really like the channel, please become a patron at my Patreon page down below. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.